So, Tim, what are some of the signs that a home might need an electrical service upgrade?
So the most common sign is basically just lack of space. You'll notice basically your panel's completely full. Physically, you can't add anything to it. Some of the other signs you can notice is you have circuit breakers that are starting to trip, or even in worst case scenario, you have a main breaker which basically govern is protects your entire panel. If that starts to trip, you can know that that's basic what we call an overload, which means you're drawing more power than what your panel is providing. In those cases, you need an upgrade. Basically, usually what we like to do is go one step up. So if you're at 100 amps, which is the most common, usually now the smallest size you'll see, we go up to 200 amps. That will double the size, basically you'll put you whatever you want. You can basically put on that. There are a couple of cases where homes are now getting so big and with whole home electrification that we do have to go up from 200 to 400 amps. It was unheard of probably 10 years ago to have a single family home have 400 amps, but now it's just with the amount of electric vehicles, and heat pumps or stoves. It's in the size of homes too, the square footage.
I was going to ask, is the size of the home a factor in that? Like we all used to be when we grew up, in like 1,500, 2,000, square foot homes. And now you're seeing lots of homes that are like 5,000 square feet or more.
Yeah, definitely for our math that we have to do to determine the size of a home, the square footage is a major factor. But not only that, there's now even a square foot limit that dictates that if you're over a certain amount of square footage, you have to go up to 400 amps. Basically, I mean, we're talking, I don't know the exact square footage, but we're talking probably around 5,000 square feet and above, which is a pretty big home in general. So, but they're trying to mitigate any issues down the line if you put a smaller service on a huge house. It's a lot easier to do things when it's getting built than when it's all finished and looks all nice and pretty.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about these different levels. So you mentioned going from 100 amp to 200 amp. Do you still see houses with like I think it's 60 amp service that's even smaller than that?
So, yes, you see them on occasion. They're few and far between, but we actually did an upgrade from a 60 to 100 amps because the couple had basically all gas, and the home was in Boston. It's been there, I don't know, probably over 100, 120 years, and 60 amps was plenty. But now they needed an upgrade. So
So in their case, going to 100 was fine for their needs. They didn't need to go all the way up from 60 to 200. Say.
exactly, yeah. So the price tag for their specific scenario to go up from 100 to 200 would have been more expensive than the normal home, and they determined that they kind of didn't need that basically option. So I always present it and tell customers, you can go up 200 if you want, but for their particular case, they didn't need it, and for what they wanted from their home, it wasn't even required.
You mentioned the size of the home being a factor in determining like what amount of amps you need on your service. What are some of the other factors?
So basically, on top of basically the size you have, I usually say thinking of the future, right? So a lot of people don't realize, okay, they buy a new house, they move into it, a lot of things they want to do. Okay, I want a new kitchen, right? I want one of those pretty kitchens that I see on HGTV, and with the island, and which comes out great all the time. But there's even codes that mandate how many circuits we have to run to your kitchen. Your kitchen originally could have maybe two circuits going to it total, maybe even one. Now we have to run usually about seven, right? Just by code, whether you're getting it or not.
Because you have all these different like appliances that have to be plugged into separate circuits.
Yep. So like you think about your microwave, your fridge, your countertop outlets, the stuff that does your coffee makers and toasters, dishwashers, disposals, all of those need dedicated circuits by our code. So in a lot of old homes, they could be all in one circuit. I've had homes that have the microwave on with the bathroom GFI, and every time the wife goes to blow dry her hair, it trips the breaker. So um, things like that will definitely make a decision of, okay, we need to go up. And now the probably the single most biggest factor I'm seeing is car chargers. Car chargers draw a lot of power, and a lot of people go and getting buying Teslas or any other type of electric car, and it uses a lot of power to do that. So when they know, okay, a lot of them know we're not going to get it now, but 3 years in the road, my next car is going to be electric car. I already know it is, right? So they're going to prepare now for it rather than waiting and having time to then have to, you know, come back and deal with it this time. So it's a lot of forward thinking you want to do of what my house wants to look like and what I want to put into it, so that you don't have to then spend all this money fixing it, then realize, oh no, I need to spend do a service upgrade and need to spend more money now.
What are the typical steps that are involved in getting an electrical service upgrade done and approved? Are there like code compliances that you have to be concerned about, and electrical inspections that have to happen?
So yeah, so typically a licensed electrician will come out to your home, basically talk to you about your options and look at your current service. We what I like to call is the straightforward services that are basically easy ones. They're just no complicated issues whatsoever. Those are generally straightforward. Even those will require us pulling a permit and having an inspection when we finish. Then there's obviously the more complicated ones. We have a couple going out now that actually we need to relocate where the existing service is, and we need to get the power company involved in that. And whenever you get the power company involved, it does slow things down and take some time to get them to approve certain aspects of your um, new location of where the power is coming from the telephone pole to your home. Or even for us, we have a couple where we have to go through the roof just because of how the house is designed. So all of that now requires getting a roofer out there and making sure that everything's going to be okay and you're going to have no leaks. So they can be definitely more involved than what people think. Um, it definitely depends on your typical home and how it's designed. Um, but on average, usually it's basically come out, give a price, look it over, then you usually pull the permit, do the job, and then get the inspection all set. It's usually this normal, straightforward, beginning to end.
Right. In terms of the cost of these upgrades, how is the upgrade level sort of, how does that impact the price tag in the end? I know you said that for that person that you mentioned going from 60 amp to 200 amp, it would be more than the cost of a normal other house, going from just like 100 to 200 amps or something like that. So how does that jump in electrical service level affect the price tag?
So, not necessarily will someone who originally has 60 amps and wants 200 will be more costly. It definitely depends on your house and definitely depends on your particular how it was done in the beginning. You have two types of basically services. We have an underground and above ground. So the underground is ones that there's no overhead wires to your home. They're all done underground. You see those a lot around the city and inner city areas more than out in the suburbs. Um, those end up having higher price tags to them because you have to actually upgrade the entire wire and pipe size that runs underground. And that usually almost always entails a the national grid or Eversource or the municipality getting involved, and they could have their own fees at times too. Um, then the overheads are more straightforward, more simple because the wires do not most of the time don't need to be upgraded, or if they do, those overhead wires are actually owned by the power company. So if they need to get upgraded or they're old, they are responsible for fixing them, not you as a homeowner. So that tends to lower the cost a lot more. Basically, what we see most of all that higher costs is really just weird locations for your panel, right? Rather than your panel being on an outside wall, it's in the middle of the home, right? And or you finished your basement and now you've a lot of people have framed in their panel, made their basement look nice. Well, now you're getting a bigger panel that's physically larger, can't fit in that cubby that they built around it. Well, now all that has to be ripped out and then rebuilt around it. So that increases our time and what we have to do and our labor cost to get that to be code compliant and what needs to be done.